Now, you probably guessed that you're going to learn more about crop dusting this week than you probably have ever known.
All rise.
Please be seated. Back on the record on case number 21-1038, it's Odum v. Frey. Parties and counsel are present in the courtroom. All court personnel are present in the courtroom. We're meeting outside the presence of the potential jury veneer for the purpose of exercising peremptory challenges. I do have just one thing I want to make sure we go over, and that is, of course, that said one counsel, I don't know which counsel inquired about a court reporter. Everything is recorded by our judicial audio visual system, JAVS, that would be available. Our pretrial order does set forth that if you want an actual court order, be responsible whichever party wanted it. But everything is being recorded and is available. Is that okay with everyone?
Yes.
Yes, sir. So we have 20 potential jurors. Jurors 1 through 16 are the potential jury proper. Jurors 17 through 20 will be the alternates. The jury proper, each side will have 4 peremptory challenges, and for the alternates, each side will have 1 peremptory challenge. So we'll have 8 jurors and 2 alternates. And I stated ahead of time, the alternates will not be aware that they are alternates until the end of the case, at which point we'll inform them, and the 8 jurors will deliberate on the case. We'll start with the plaintiff. Mr. Busby, your first peremptory challenge.
Mr.
Juror number 1. Mr. Leath?
Thank you, Your Honor. Is it okay if I stay seated?
Yeah.
Okay. Your Honor, we would like to excuse juror number 6.
Juror number 6.
Yes.
Plaintiff's second peremptory challenge.
You got a juror number 8.
Juror number 8. Mr. Leath?
Yes, Your Honor. And just to make sure I understand, I can use a peremptory for any of the numbers 1 through 16?
Yes.
Okay. Then we would like to excuse juror number 9.
Juror number 9.
Yes.
And Mr. Busby.
You got a juror number 11.
Plaintiff's third is juror number 11. Mr. Leath?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. We would like to excuse juror number 10. Yes.
Plaintiff's third is juror number 10.
Defense third.
The defense's third is juror number 10. Mr. Busby, your final peremptory challenge.
Your Honor, juror number 4.
Juror number 4. And Mr. Leath?
Just one moment, Your Honor. Your Honor, we will waive number 4. Waive our peremptory challenge.
Defendant does not exercise their 4th peremptory challenge.
Correct.
So that essentially means that it will be juror number 16. Just in the order of the call.
Wait, Your Honor, if we don't, may I address the court seating, please?
Yes.
If we don't exercise our 4th challenge, then juror number 16 drops off, is that what?
Yes.
Okay. A moment, Your Honor.
Sure.
Yes, Your Honor.
So the way it works, and just so everyone's clear, we'll seat the first 8 out of jurors 1 through 16. And if you waive, or if more than one were waived, it would then that essentially means that we start with 6. They would end up not serving as jurors, juror number 16, or if there were 2 waivers, 15 and 16.
The first 8, okay. You're saying it's the first 8.
All right, then, Your Honor, now that I appreciate the clarification, and after discussion here with my client, we will go ahead and use our 4th peremptory on number 13.
Juror number 13.
Yes.
And then alternate juror peremptory challenges, that's jurors number 17, 18, 19, and 20. Mr. Busby, your first peremptory challenge?
Mr.
Juror
Number 19.
Juror number 19.
Yes, sir.
And Mr. Leath?
Yes, Your Honor, we will use our peremptory on the alternate juror number 17.
Juror number 17. The clerk will quickly, not quickly, but as soon as she can, she'll print up the final thing. We'll go over it to make sure we're all in agreement. It'll be Ms. Do you agree with that, Ms. Busby?
Sounds right to me, Your Honor.
And you agree with that, Mr. Leath?
That sounds correct, Your
We'll
Honor.
get you a final list so we can make sure that we all agree.
Your Honor, may I ask a question? When do you typically do jury instructions during the course of the trial?
Usually at the end. I know I have them, and what I'd like you to do is see what, if you guys can get together during the trial and see what you agree on, and then we can discuss what we need to discuss.
So, one of my tasks is to do the jury instructions. So, we're looking toward maybe Thursday afternoon or something. Somewhere there.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes these things go really fast. I mean, if we have time, if there's, but usually it's at the end.
Yeah, because it is somewhat dependent upon the evidence coming in. So, thank you.
Well, we should. I mean, so, can we, maybe have just a quick chat, like just a quick conference with the judge with you before?
Yeah. Do we need to attend it or just here at the bench?
Bench is fine.
Okay.
What are we doing?
Just coordinating on it before we take evidence.
Okay, good point.
Yeah, we just wanted. Thanks, Luke.
Yeah.
Just put it up here. So, do full council have the impaneled jury list?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Does everybody agree that that's the list?
You do, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
Very well. And the record should reflect, we did have a bench conference. We talked about some procedural and scheduling issues. We're gonna excuse the jury a little early. The council's gonna meet together and discuss exhibits and see what they can agree on. And then we'll bring the jury back at 1:30 and do opening statements and begin testimony at that time. Is there anything about the bench conference we had that anyone else wants to put on the record?
Nothing, Your Honor.
No, Your Honor, thank you.
And it's just my habit, I do mark the time whenever we have a bench conference, and then when we're outside the presence of the jury, I make sure, in give both counsel an opportunity to make a record if they want to. Generally, it's nothing, but I just want to make sure that there is that opportunity. Ms. Whalen, let's go ahead and bring in the prospective jury panel. We're back on the record on case number 21-1038, Odum v. Frey. The record should reflect the presence of the parties, counsel, all court personnel. We have the prospective jury panel that we are about to seat the jury proper. The clerk will now seat the jury. If you'll come forward and we'll have you sit in that third chair on the back row. And that'll be your seat for the remainder of the trial. That one right there. And those will be your seats for the remainder of the trial. Ladies and gentlemen, for the remainder of you, I have the same good news and bad news that I had for the group I excused earlier. In a minute, I'll excuse you. You'll be able to get back to your life. You'll be done with your responsibilities in this case, but you are subject to being recalled as jurors for the remainder of this jury panel group, which goes to about February of next year. I want to thank you for your willingness to serve, for your willingness to sacrifice your time. I know how busy our lives are. It seems like they get busier and busier. Taking the time and being willing to, especially on a week-long trial, it's a sacrifice, and I appreciate that willingness to do that. It's what makes this system possible. So thank you. We'll let you get on with your lives. You're welcome to stay, but if you want to leave, you're excused. Will counsel stipulate for the correct seating of the jury?
So stipulated.
Yes, Your Honor.
So ladies and gentlemen, the jury would now like to briefly explain the role of each of you and each party in the courtroom that they'll play as this case proceeds. You, at the conclusion of the evidence, will determine the facts in the case and apply those facts to the law which will be stated to you by the court. On that basis, you will reach a verdict consistent with the facts in the law. It is the duty of the attorneys to present their respective cases in the most favorable light consistent with the truth in the law. However, statements and arguments of counsel made during the trial are not to be treated by you as evidence except as to matters of fact which have been stipulated to by both attorneys. Keep an open mind, refrain from forming or expressing any opinion concerning this case until all of the evidence is in. The attorneys have made their closing arguments and you've received the court's instructions as to the law, and you have retired to the jury room for your verdict. During the trial, do not discuss the case among yourselves or with any other person. Do not allow anyone to speak of this case in your presence, and you're not to read, listen to, or observe any newspaper, radio, or television account of the trial while the trial is in progress. Not only must your conduct as jurors be above reproach, but you must avoid even the appearance of improper conduct. Do not talk to the parties, the attorneys, or the witnesses during the trial, even upon matters unconnected with the case. In the event that any person should attempt to discuss the case with you, or in any manner attempt to influence you with respect to this case, you are to advise the bailiff, who will in turn advise the court. Any rulings made by the court during the course of the trial will be based on the controlling law of the state of Nevada. Accordingly, you must not infer any leaning on my part based upon such rulings or infer any feeling on my part for or against either side in this case. If any objection to the admission of evidence is sustained, you must not speculate as to what the answer might have been or draw any inference from the question itself. During the course of the trial, matters may arise which must be determined by me as a matter of law outside of your presence. You are not to speculate or be concerned in any way as to the reason for such occurrences. They will be as limited in frequency and duration as the law permits. Observe carefully each witness as he or she discusses or testifies, and consider carefully all the evidence as it is presented. It is you, the jury, who must determine the credibility of the witness and wherein lies the truth. If during the examination of a witness some questions occur to you, be patient. The answer will probably be given to you as before the case is concluded. If not, write your answer on a slip of paper and hand it to the bailiff during the recess. The bailiff will give the question to me, and if the question is a proper question under the law, I will see that it is answered. You may individually take notes during the trial. For that purpose, you've been provided pencils and notepads. In the event of a conflict between the notes of the individual jurors during your deliberations, you are not to rely on your notes. These proceedings are being recorded by an audio-visual system called JABS, and that is the official and authentic record of the trial. The clerk will now swear the jury.
Please stand and raise your right hand. Do you and each of you solemnly swear or affirm that you will well and truly try the case now pending before this court, so help you God or under the pains and penalties of perjury? If so, answer, I do.
Thank you. Please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you are admonished that no juror may declare to his fellow jurors any fact relating to the case as of your own knowledge. If any juror discovers during the course of the trial or after you have retired that he or she or any other juror has personal knowledge of any fact in controversy in this case, you shall disclose such situation to me out of the presence of the other jurors. You are to use the jury room during all short recesses during the trial. Strangely enough, that room is the one that has the sign on it that says jury room. And so that'll be your home for the remainder of the trial. It'll be open to you in the morning, so when you get here in the morning before trial starts, if you would just go straight to the jury room, and we'll have the door closed, but go in and shut the door. The bailiff will have refreshments, coffee, some type of refreshment. So if you go straight there, you'll be able to enjoy those before we start the case for the day. If during the trial you should need anything else for your comfort, please advise the bailiff, who will make every effort to accommodate you. The bailiff for the court is Mr. Brian Casper. He's there. He also has your notes and pencils. He'll be the one that if you have anything, or if you give him a note or anything, just give it directly to him. You want to give the notepads out, Mr. Casper? You can leave those. The court will be locked up when the court personnel isn't in here, so you can leave those on the chair. They'll be safe. We're going to break for the lunch hour now. We're going to give you a full 2-hour lunch. We're going to have to come back at 1:30. We're going to continue working on just making sure that we have all the evidence marked and do that so that when you come back, we're ready. So we'll excuse the jurors for their lunch break and ask that you return at, say, 1:25. Just go straight into the jury room there. We'll then try to begin promptly at 1:30. So we'll take this 2-hour recess. During this recess, it is your duty not to converse among yourselves or with anyone else on any subject connected with the trial. Do not communicate with anyone in any way regarding the case or its merits, either by phone, email, text, internet, or other means. Do not read, watch, or listen to any news or media accounts or commentary about the case. Do not do any research, such as consulting dictionaries, using the internet, or using reference materials. Do not make any investigation, test the theory of the case, recreate any aspect of the case, or in any other way investigate or learn about the case on your own. Additionally, it is your duty not to form or express an opinion on any subject connected with the case until it is finally submitted to you. So it's 11:28. We'll be in recess till 1:30. Thank you.
All rise.
We're back on the record on case number 21-1038, Odum v. Frey. Record should reflect the presence of the parties, all counsel, all court personnel. We're meeting outside the presence of the jury and no counsel before lunch and met together to discuss exhibits, and I wanted to put something on the record. Are we ready to do that? Go ahead.
Yes, Your Honor.
Your Honor, if I may, parties have stipulated to numerous exhibits be admitted into the record. And if I may, I'd like to read a list of those exhibits and then move for their.
Of course.
All right, starting with exhibit 6, 7, 8, 9. Exhibit 14. Exhibit 15. Exhibit 16. Exhibit 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28. 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 51, 52, 53, 54, 56, 57, 58, 59, 60, 61, finally 62. Your Honor, if I may, I'd like to move that these exhibits be admitted into the record, that I believe opposing counsel so stipulated.
Mr. Leath?
Yes, Your Honor, I'm just double checking my notes, but I believe that is an accurate list of the exhibits to which we have stipulated. I do note that 59, 60, 61, 62 appear to be duplicates of earlier marked exhibits, 7, 8, 9, and 31. So we'll only use one, is what I'm saying.
So these stipulated exhibits will be admitted. Thank you for the work you put in before that. That'll speed this up.
Thank you, Your Honor. I had a question about just courtroom decorum. When we are in the middle of examining a witness and we're using the Elmo device and we may be approaching the witness, do we need to ask permission each time we enter the well or permission to approach the witness?
Look, I just think we want to be cautious that we don't approach the witness, unnecessarily.
Sure.
But I think if you just ask me to approach the well, I think once is fine.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor.
We'll do that. And I realize we will have to go back and forth with the witnesses. We do have the document card. It can be displayed on all the TVs and on the witness stand here. And there is a drawing capability, and the witness can also draw. So,
Great, thank you.
okay. Anything else? Mr. Bailiff, why don't we go ahead and bring in the jury? Welcome back from lunch. Thank you for being so timely. We're back on the record on case number 21-1038, Odum Frey. The record should reflect the presence of parties, counsel, all court personnel, and the jury. Will counsel stipulate to the correct seating of the jury?
So stipulated?
Yes.
So ladies and gentlemen of the jury, counsel will now state to you the nature of their respective claims orally during their opening statements. Each party has the burden of proving their respective claims or defenses by a preponderance of the evidence. The purpose of this trial is to determine whether or not they will meet that burden. It is your primary responsibility as jurors to find and determine the facts. Under our system of civil procedure, you are the sole judge of the facts. You are to determine the facts from the testimony here and the other evidence, including exhibits introduced in court. It is up to you to determine the inferences which you may feel may be properly drawn from the evidence. Does either party wish to invoke the rule of exclusion?
We do, Your Honor. Thank you.
And what I'll just ask is that each counsel just make sure that their witnesses are not present in the courtroom and that they don't discuss their testimony with any other witnesses until they testify.
Yes, Your Honor.
we've now reached the stage of these proceedings where counsel may make their opening statements. The law provides that the attorney for the plaintiff will make his or her, or his in this case, opening statement first. The attorney for the defendant may then make his opening statement or may reserve it until the conclusion of the plaintiff's evidence. Mr. Busby, you may now begin. Do you want to beg Odum?
Yes, I would.
Can we get it for you? Mr. Bailiff, your podium, Mr. Busby.
Okay.
Yes, of course.
Thanks so much. All right. Once again, my name is Luke Busby. I represent Salisha, Odum, the plaintiff in this case. And again, I'll try and be as brief as I can. I just want to explain very briefly what the evidence in this case is going to show. Now, Salisha is a small organic farmer here in Fallon. She has been since 2003. She operates her farm on 1 acre parcel on McPherson Lane, which is kind of in the northeasterly part of Fallon, as I understand it. She lives there with her 2 kids, and for years operated, a small business. Not she doesn't make a lot of money, but she does what she wants, and it's fulfilling for her. She sells organic produce at farmers markets in Reno, at her roadside farm stand, and at the Fallon Food Hub. Now, she prides herself on selling healthy food to her customers, and her idea of healthy is that the food she sells is free from herbicides and pesticides. And she'll testify that she ran this business successfully without interference for a long time. Now, the issues in this case, for this instance, began in August of 2020, where Salisha was farming her field and she saw a plane fly over and spray her field with pesticides. Now, that plane was owned and operated, we'll show, by Mr. Frey. And basically, when an organic farmer gets sprayed by pesticides, it hits the brakes on everything. Because what they have to do is file paperwork with their certifying entity, and they have to complain to the state, the Department of Agriculture, explain what happened, and they're essentially on a standstill until they get test results back. Now, for this instance, in August of 2020, the test results came back positive. So Salisha made the determination that she wasn't going to sell food that was contaminated with the pesticide at issue. And now it's something called chloropyrifero. I practiced that many, many times. I'm probably still not saying it correctly, but I think you get the gist of what it is. Now, chloropyrifero is a neurotoxin. We're going to present evidence showing it was banned from use in food crops in the United States in 2021. The evidence will show that after being sprayed and receiving the test results, Salisha did some inquiries as to what this stuff was and was horrified by the results and decided she wasn't going to sell her food with the stuff on it, even if it was in a low concentration, which the test results indicated. Now, so she stopped farming as soon as that happened in 2020, the evidence will show. The next year, she starts up again. Then on July 6, 2021, the same thing happens. Another plane owned and operated by Mr. Frey flies over her property and sprays her with pesticides. Again, the brakes are hit. She has to stop everything she's doing. She has to complain to the Nevada Department of Agriculture and wait for the test results. Now, the test results in that case came back negative. But still, Salisha felt there could have been an issue. Then, in late August of 2021, it happened again. And we're going to show you video evidence of a plane owned by Mr. Frey flying over my client's property. The Department of Agriculture did another investigation. The test results were negative. But again, my client actually experiencing the spraying incident herself, she doesn't believe those results. So the Department of Agriculture, after the first incident, told Mr. Frey, hey, stay away from Salisha's property. She's an organic farmer, and what you're doing could hurt her business. Yet, 2 more times, the evidence will show in this case, he continued to fly over her property. And In this case, we're making various claims. We're making claims for negligence, which is basically the kind of claim you see in a car accident, where there's a duty to drive carefully, for example, or to fly your plane carefully. There's a breach of that duty, and it causes damages to a party. We're also making a claim for negligence per se, where the duty is established by law. Now, there's a law in Nevada that says it's unlawful to carelessly apply pesticides. And we're going to argue that that's a basis of a claim for negligence per se. But we're also making claims for assault, battery, trespass, nuisance, and for exemplary damages. And the assault and battery claims are claims associated with the physical spraying of Ms. Odum by Mr. Frey, and the threatened physical spraying of Ms. Odum by Mr. Frey. The trespass claim has to do with the unlawful physical invasion of Ms. Odum's property by Mr. Frey via his pesticides. Nuisance is the substantial and unreasonable interference with the use and enjoyment of property. And the evidence will show that Ms. Odum's use of her property as a small organic farm has been substantially and unreasonably interfered with by Mr. Frey. Now, and the assault and battery claim also carry, and other claims carry an element of intent. And when something happens one time, it can be an accident. When it happens multiple times, that can form the basis for a more serious allegation of intentional misconduct, such as assault and battery. And we're arguing that that's the case here. It's no accident this kept happening over and over again. So we're also going to ask you to assess punitive damages against Mr. Frey, because this needs to stop. Ms. Odum needs to be able to use her property in the manner she sees fit. She has a right, just like anybody else, to farm the way she chooses, as do her neighbors who use pesticides. Ms. Odum isn't suing any of her neighbors, and she has no qualms with anybody who chooses to farm in a different way. But insofar as an operator of a business interferes with her right to farm the way she wants to farm, that gives rise, evidence will show, to legal claims, especially when it's done repeatedly and intentionally. Now, we think the evidence will show that they knew they were spraying her with pesticides and that it was unlawful and that would have devastating effects on their business. But they did it anyway. And that subjected Salisha, the evidence will show, to cruel and unjust hardship and showed a conscious disregard for her rights to live her life the way she chooses. Now, this case isn't about pesticides good or organic farming bad. It's not about any of that. You don't have to make a decision about a political issue about pesticides, organic farming, any of that. All you're deciding is whether Ms. Odum has the right, whether the evidence shows that there was a violation of her right to live her life and to manage her property and her business the way she chooses. Thank you.
Mr. Leath, do you wish to make an opening statement at this time?
Yes, Your Honor, thank you. Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you again for your patience this morning during the jury selection process. And again, by introduction, I'm David Leath. I'm the attorney for the defendants in this matter, Jerry Frey and his company, Frey Spray. Now, you probably guess that you're going to learn more about crop dusting this week than you probably have ever known, ever probably wanted to know. But I'll tell you that you're going to learn a lot about crop dusting because it's important. It's important to my clients, it's important to the customers for whom they're doing the work, and it's important to agriculture. And so what I'd like to do is just kind of spend a minute here talking about kind of what to expect, a little bit of an outline of what we believe in this case the facts will show and the evidence will prove. And what we believe the evidence will establish in this case is that you will be able to see good, safe, and careful crop dusting by my client. And that'll be by Jerry, and it'll be by his pilot gentleman by the name of Lynn Weaver. And what you'll learn is that there's a safe and careful that there was no proof of exposure to pesticides as being claimed by Ms. Odum, that there is going to be no proof of any sort of drift of pesticides as claimed by Ms. Odum. And just by way of side note, drift is where it's sprayed in one area and then moves to a different area. And what you will see and hear in this case, and through the witnesses and through the evidence, the documentary evidence and some Google Earth images and other photographic evidence, is that you'll get a chance to hear from the pilots themselves. You'll hear from Lynn Weaver. He'll talk about how the application that he performed was safe and careful. He was out there spraying the Rambling River Ranch, which is right there on 50 and Robertson, back on August 31st of 2020. And you'll hear from Lynn about that application, about how we went out there. You'll hear about how he carefully mixed the pesticides. They put in a tank mix with water. You'll hear about how he's out there in his crop duster, how he sprays. They get down low so that all of the spray is focused right on the top of the crop level. You'll learn about how he uses large droplets to make sure that all of the spray stays on the target field. You'll hear about how after he makes a pass across the field, he turns the spray off so that there is no risk of exposure or drift to the surrounding area. And you'll get a chance to listen to Lynn and explain how he did a good, safe, and careful crop dusting job that morning. You'll then get a chance to hear from Lynn as well with respect to the second incident that's being claimed by Ms. Odum, and that was on July 5th of 21. And you'll learn from Lynn that on July 5th of 21, he wasn't spraying anywhere in the Fallon area. He was actually spraying some crop fields out about 5 miles west of town near the diversion dam. And so you'll learn from Lynn's testimony that the claim by Ms. Odum that she was sprayed on July 5th of 21 is without merit because he wasn't even in that area. And then you'll learn about the application that took place August 16th of 21. And that's where Jerry was spraying himself. And you'll learn that Jerry was spraying a field that's to the north of where Ms. Odum lives. And you'll learn about how he did the same thing as Lynn, made a good, safe, and careful application that day. And then what's important is that you're not going to hear just from the pilots themselves. You're also going to hear from the Nevada Department of Ag. And there's witnesses, for example, Vanze Lum. And you're going to learn how, from Mr. Lum, it's his job at the Nevada Department of Ag to investigate claims that are made by people who believe that either them or their crops have been exposed to pesticides. And by the way, earlier today, during the voir dire process, we're talking a little bit about different types of pesticides. We're going to learn during this trial that the pesticide that Ms. Odum is complaining about with respect to the first incident was an insecticide, the second was a herbicide, and the third was another insecticide. And why that's important is because when Vanze Lum is out there collecting evidence, if the claim is that the plants are exposed to a herbicide, then you would expect the plants to have symptoms of herbicide exposure. For example, they would be starting to die, just like when you spray Roundup on your weeds. And there was none of that. But In any event, after you hear from the pilots, you'll hear from the Nevada Department of Ag, you'll hear from Vanze, and you'll hear how he went out there, he investigated each of these 3 incidents. And not only will you hear from Vanze, but you'll also be able to get a chance to look at his reports after he testifies. And you'll see in his reports how he did a very thorough investigation. And you'll see that his conclusion in each of his investigations into each of these 3 incidents is that there was no proof of any exposure or drift as a result of this crop dusting by my clients. And then, in this trial, you'll also get a chance to hear not only from the pilots, not only from Department of Ag, but you'll also have a chance to hear from an expert witness that we hired. He's an independent consultant that we hired to look into this. He's an agronomist by trade. His name is Dr. Dale Rush. You'll hear from him, and you'll hear that based on his review of all the evidence, that he believes that there was no exposure or drift or any proof of what Ms. Odum is claiming. And so at the end of this trial, we'll get a chance to present our closing statements to each of you. And what I would ask is during the course of this case, you just please just listen carefully to the evidence, especially the evidence that we present on behalf of the defense of my clients, because it's important. The details are very important. And then when we present our closing to you at the end of this trial, I'll be able to come back to each of you, talk some more, talk about these witnesses I've just described, remind each of you of what their opinions and testimony is, and I believe at the end of the day, you will reach the same conclusion that we have, which is that this was a good, safe, careful crop dusting by my clients and that they're not at fault. Thank you very much.
Mr. Busby, you may call your first witness.
Thank you. I call Vanze Lum, that lives in the hall. And if I may, I'd like to get situated.
Of course. Mr. Lum, if you please just come forward here to the witness stand.
Yes, Your Honor.
And if you face the clerk and raise your right arm to take the oath of the witness.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony that you're about to give in this matter now pending before the court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God or under the pains and penalties of perjury?
Please be seated. Mr. Lum, you can move that microphone just a little bit closer if you want.
Okay.
There's everything that's shown there should be shown on your screen. Go ahead and see it.
Okay. Good afternoon, Mr. Lum.
Good afternoon.
It's a pleasure to see you again.
Yes.
Thank you for coming. I just have a few questions for you about the incidents involving Ms. Odum and her complaints to the Department of Agriculture.
Yes.
So, but I want to give the jury an idea of who you are and what you do. How long have you worked for the department?
Can we, just for the record, can we get his name and spelling?
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Mr. Lum, would you mind?
Yes, my name is Vanze, V-A-N-Z-E. Last name is Lum, L-U-M.
And I believe the witness needs to be sworn.
I think it's just, that's
I'm
right.
just, I just
I'm
wondering.
sorry. Okay, I'm getting mixed up. Okay. All right, Mr. Lum, how long have you worked for the Department of Agriculture?
I have worked for the Nevada Department of Agriculture for about 4.5 years.
Okay.
Before that, I was an agricultural inspector with San Joaquin County in California for an additional 9 years.
Okay.
Same job.
Okay. Can you describe for the jury the nature of your job?
My job is pesticide regulation and enforcement. So what I do is inspections, agricultural inspections, pest control inspections, cannabis inspections, And I routinely inspect facilities to make sure that they're complying with Nevada state law concerning regulations.
Okay,
I also am called to do investigations. And this is when a complaint comes in that is pesticide related. At that point, myself or another inspector will be called to do an investigation on that complaint and see if there was a violation of Nevada pesticide regulations and gather evidence and gather samples to present to my supervisor for a possible fine action or violation.
okay. Do you recall doing an investigation of a report by my client in August of 2020?
Yes.
Okay. If you could turn to the screen right in front of you there, do you see that document?
Yes.
Okay, that's been marked as Exhibit 61. It's been stipulated in evidence by the parties. Can you tell the jury what that is?
That is my investigation summary, a report on the investigation I did for Ms. Odum on complaint that was filed by her against Frey Spray for depositing an application improperly on her property.
Okay, and when did you first become aware of Ms. Odum's complaint?
Do you mind if I look at the
Feel free. If you need a second to review it, go ahead.
So on August 31st, I was notified about the complaint from Ms. Odum.
Okay. So you received a call from Ms. Odum, is that right?
I probably received a call from Ms. Odum, and at that point, I would have contacted my supervisor, Brett Allen,
Okay.
and I would have alerted him to the fact that there was a complaint. He likely also received a complaint at the same time, and from that point on, he would have determined which inspector would go out to address the complaint. In this case, he assigned me to do it.
You're the lucky victim.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so what did you do next?
From that point, I contacted Ms. Odum and got some of the facts of the case, who was involved,
Okay.
and what happened. And I also, at that point, I think I made an appointment to come see her the following day in order to collect samples to take back to the lab.
All right, so did you visit her the next day?
Yes, I did.
And was that September 1st, 2020?
Yes,
Okay. Did you communicate with Ms. Odum when you got there?
yes.
Do you recall what she said to you?
I believe on that day, she told me that a plane flew over her house several times in the morning between 6 and 7. And on the plane's third pass, she noticed the chemical smell. And she also had experienced symptoms of pesticide exposure, which included the burning throat, rash on her face, and she felt dizzy.
And what did you do in response to her allegations?
In response to her allegations, I collected samples on the property from her field, which is an organic field of vegetables. And I believe, yes, I collected 2 vegetation samples. One was from captive plants, and the other was from a lilac. Once I collected these samples and made notes of what she told me, I put them in proper storage, which is double bag, and marked them and put them in a cooler for transport to the Nevada Department of Agriculture laboratory in Sparks.
Okay. How did you choose which plants to sample?
I asked Ms. Odum if she could show me the plants that she thought were exhibiting symptoms. I believe she told me those particular plants, the ones that she noticed having symptoms from the pesticides.
Okay. It states here that Ms. Odum was able to provide you with information about the plane in question, and from that you were able to determine the pilot was Jerry Frey.
Yes.
What information did she give you?
She told me that a crop duster belonging to Mr. Frey had sprayed over the property. And I was able to contact Mr. Frey and asked him if he was doing an application in that area on that particular day.
Okay, so, I'm sorry, Mr. Luke, go ahead.
That he told me he was conducting an application on rambling Farmers Ranch, Field L13, which is approximately 1/4 mile west of the Pearson Line.
Okay. Do you know where Rambling River Ranch is, Field Bell 13, where that's located?
Yes, it's from Ms. Odum's property, it's about 1/4 mile west.
Can you point out on this map whether you see that property?
I'm not great with maps.
Let me help you out here.
So the field, yeah, and I hope I'm going in the right direction, but it should have been the one up here.
All right. And as you've discovered, you can work that screen. Show what you're putting on. So that's the field you believe Mr. Frey was spraying?
I believe so. If I have my directions correct, I will be turned around.
I believe this is oriented north-south, so that would be north of.
Okay, so if
is that
it
correct?
was said to be the field west, then it would have had to have been this one.
Did you look at a map to confirm which field it was at the time you did your investigation?
Yes,
I'm not going to give you a memory test. I realize it was a long time ago.
I would fail.
Okay. Did you determine what pesticides or herbicides or insecticides
Yes,
Mr. Frey was spraying that day?
yes, I did request Mr. Frey's records for his applications on that day.
Okay.
And I was given records that indicated that he used, I believe, 2 different products in his mixture spraying this field. One was Fast Track, which has an active ingredient of cypermethrin, and the other was Uni4E, which has an active ingredient of chlorpyrifos.
Do you know what cypermethrin does?
These are both insecticides which will control insects in agricultural fields. As far as method of control, I'm not familiar with how the particular mechanism is that kills the insect.
Are you aware of whether it's lawful now to use both of these substances?
I do not know if it's lawful to use both the substances now. I've not checked that recently.
Did you investigate the nature of these labels after you got the complaint and did your sample collection?
Yes.
What did you find?
So both these products were legal for use in the state of Nevada at the time they were being used. I believe, and I'm trying to remember if this is the one where I did what do I call it, residue investigation.
Okay.
I'd have to look further into my reports. But what I determined was that these 2 products were licensed for use in the state of Nevada, registered in the state of Nevada, and listed on the EPA website.
Okay, did you examine the label for either of these pesticides?
Yes.
Can you describe for the jury why you would examine the label in such circumstances?
The reason you examine the label is to determine if the application was done properly and if the applicator followed the label directions. The reason for this is that pesticide labels are legal documents. The label has to be followed exactly, and the applicator cannot go off label in the application. So I do check that to make sure that the products were being used as prescribed by the label.
Okay, and if you could, Mr. Lum, do you recognize what I brought up as Exhibit 16, which has been secured into permission by the parties?
Yes.
What is it?
Uni4E.
Is this the label for one of the pesticides that Mr. Frey was spraying that day?
It does appear to be.
Okay. And what is the active ingredient of this?
Chlorpyrifos.
Okay, chlorpyrifos. Let's look into that. All right. Do you see the warning section on page 3?
Yes.
Call that out.
May be fatal or swallowed, harmful or absorb through skin, causes moderate eye irritation. Avoid contact with skin, eyes, or clothing.
Okay. So, I mean, it sounds to me like this is relatively relatively dangerous stuff. Would you agree with that assessment?
Objection, Your Honor, leading.
Sustained. Do you see the clear button where we can just clear those green buttons?
Is it on the bottom?
I believe it's just the bottom left of the screen.
And Mr. Busby, you can do that as well.
All right, we got it. Yes, we got it.
Okay.
That's okay.
Okay, Mr. Lam, I'll rephrase the question. What's your assessment of the relative danger of the chemical that was being used that day from Mr. Frey?
As a warning product, it does have the potential to cause human health effects and has to be used more carefully than a caution product.
Was the description of what Ms. Odum told you happened to her that day consistent with what you saw here?
It does seem to be consistent with some of the witness symptoms.
Did she know at the time she told you what her symptoms were, what had been sprayed on her property?
Objection, Foundation.
Sustained.
Okay, I'll rephrase her. Did Ms. Odum ever ask you what had been sprayed on her property?
Objection, Foundation.
I'll allow that.
Yes, and so did ask, and I told her I would find out and get back to her with that information.
And going back to Exhibit 61, which is your report, this may refresh your recollection to that exchange, does it?
Yes, I believe my supervisor provided her with the names of two pesticide acts of day on September 2nd, along with safety dash sheets.
Okay.
Your Honor, if I may, can the witness, is there a microphone that the witness has that maybe can shift a little closer? Thank you.
Sorry.
The acoustics in this courtroom are not great, so.
I'll try to face there.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Hearing is much better than my eyes, so I was able to hear you. Okay, Mr. Williams, so it looks like this indicates that, from your report, do you agree that the incident happened on August 31st, at which time she told you what she was experiencing?
Yes,
Okay, and then on September 1st, you went out and collected samples, right?
yes,
And then on September 2nd, she was asking what was in the mix she was spraying, right?
yes.
All right. All right. Moving on. All right. Next, let's talk about your next assessment of the facts, which I believe related to the wind in the area. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And you were able to make some determinations about the wind from certain sources?
Yes, we use a site called Reso West for weather data,
Okay.
and we try to get the closest weather station to where the incident occurred.
Okay. So where's the closest weather station to Ms. Odum's property?
That would have been Fallon Naval Air Station, which was approximately 12 miles from the site of the incident.
Do you think that that gives you a reasonably good assessment of what the conditions were like at Ms. Odom's property on the day in question?
It seems to,
Okay. Is that just as close as you can get based on what's available?
yes.
All right. Turning to your findings and recommendations, can you tell me what the Department of Agriculture found when they did this, ran the samples?
Yes. One of the samples collected, which was, I believe, the pepper, excuse me, had a detection of chlorpyrifos at extremely low level, which was 0.009 parts per million.
And that was the same chemical that Mr. Frey told you he was spraying on the day in question, correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right. And I'd like you to take a look at what's marked as Exhibit 14. Do you recognize this document?
Yes.
Okay. All right, I'm going to turn to that page here. Are these the test results from the Department of Agriculture?
Yes, they are.
And they show a positive test for trifluorous, right?
Yes, for chlorpyrifos.
But not cypermethrin, right?
No.
Do you understand limits of detection?
Only in the most basic basic sense.
Okay.
I'm not a chemist.
Do other people in the Department of Agriculture make determinations based on detection limits for certain chemicals?
Yes, that would happen in the chemistry laboratory, and the chemist will make that determination.
Okay. So can you describe for the jury your understanding of what limits of detection are?
I believe,
Sorry to put you on the spot.
and again, as I understand it, limit of detection is the point in which the machines can analyze the sample and get a reliable reading that would be considered accurate, I guess, or it would be something they could report. If it was below a certain limit, the machines wouldn't pick it up and they wouldn't be able to report it.
Okay.
That's my understanding.
Okay. So, Miss Odum's farm is about an acre, right? Would you agree with that?
I believe so, but I never have actually measured it.
Okay. Let's zoom in on that real quick. Do you recognize that, Mr. Lund?
Yes.
What is it?
That's Miss Odum's farm and residence.
And can you give me a general idea of where the two samples you collected on September 1st, where from the farm you took them?
To be honest, I cannot.
Okay.
I do not recall.
Okay.
Where
So I just want to ask you about what the results mean. So you had one positive test, right?
correct.
Okay. Does that mean that it was necessarily true that there was that pesticide other places on the property?
Objection, foundation.
I'll allow a question.
As far as I know, I guess, could you kind of ask the question again, because I'm not sure I'm understanding this.
Sure, I'll try and, just because you found it in one place in the property doesn't mean it is or isn't on another place in the property, right?
Objection, speculation.
I'll allow him to answer if he knows.
I don't know that I'm qualified to answer that.
Okay.
I mean, I could answer it in relation to an application, an aerial application.
Okay.
But I cannot answer it in relation to other types of applications that may have caused that rate.
Fair enough, I'm just asking what you know. And I'd like to return real quick to exhibit 14, okay? Which is the results. Do you see the date there at the bottom? I won't present it to you, I'm sorry. It's not showing up when it should. I'm sorry, just wait. All right, there we go. Sorry about that. All right, do you see the date there?
Yes, 10/12/2020.
Okay. So, what does that date mean?
That should have been the date that the results were certified by Dr. Zhang.
Okay. And who's Dr. Jane?
Dr. Zhang is the head chemist for the Department of Agriculture.
Okay. And how long after the spraying incident was that?
It's all flying right out of my head, I apologize. My report, I think, was August 31st, was it? Or,
I believe the date of the incident was August 31st.
okay. So I was, August 31st, I went out the next day, which should have been September 1st. I would have transported samples on September 1st to the lab and dropped them off.
Okay.
And alerted the lab personnel that they were in the lab refrigerator or freezer waiting to be tested. And they would have taken it.
Okay. So it takes some time between the time period where you're collecting samples to get the results, right?
It does.
Okay. And do you think it's fair to say there's no final determination on whether or not it's a, yeah, you were sprayed or no, you weren't sprayed until you actually get the results from the lab?
Yes, that would be a fair statement.
Okay. And the date of your report here, I believe, if I may, is October 14th, 2020?
That's correct.
Okay. Do you recall whether you gave Ms. Odum the lab results before or after you issued this report?
I don't recall. Usually I will give the final report as include the lab results in.
Okay. But you do provide the report to the complainant, correct?
Yes, the report, the final report is sent to the complainant.
Is it also sent to the person against whom the complaint is made?
Yes, it is.
So in October,
All parties involved.
I'm sorry, Mr. Wolf, go ahead.
I send it to all parties involved.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Odum, can you explain in everyday language what your determination was based on the facts you discovered?
Based on the facts I discovered, we determined it unlikely that Jerry Frey had actually sprayed the property on the day in question. The reason for that determination was because Mr. Frey, or I should say Frey spray, because I don't know what the title was, I don't recall, was spraying a mixture of two chemicals. Both those chemicals were present in the tank when he did the application. If he did the application the day before and it actually contacted Ms. Odum's property in the manner which she described, I would have expected to find fairly high levels on the entire field, not just one place. Also, in the sample, I should have detected, or I should have had detection of both chemicals, not just one.
Okay.
And that's what made the determination.
Okay. You took two samples, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And so I'd like you to take a look at the paragraph I've highlighted for you. Do you think this basically embodies what you just told me about your results?
Yes, I believe so.
Do you see there a discussion of the half-life of the chemicals involved?
Yes.
Can you explain that concept to the jury?
So the half-life of the chemical would be the point at which half of that original detection, it would be half. If you detected it on day one at a certain level, at day 11-16, it would be half that level. So it continues to degrade slowly over time and can be detected even past the half-life by lab techniques usually.
Right. So, it's just kind of in everyday language, your determination was, hey, we should have found both, we only found one, therefore, we're not gonna pursue any enforcement action against Mr. Frey, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Do you have any idea where the chlorperforus that was found on my client's property came from?
I could offer speculation without looking at it.
I'm just asking what you know for sure.
I know nothing for sure about where it came from.
All right. So, I want to turn to another section of your report where you discuss your response. So,
I can't even see his lips.
does it state here that you recommend Frey spray avoid flying directly over populated areas even when en route to the application site?
Yes, I did make that recommendation to Frey spray.
Okay. Did you,
Mr. Busby, can I just, I'm noticing, are you having a hard time seeing the witness?
I can't even see his lips move,
That-
I
that's
can't
okay,
do
that's
anything,
okay.
he stands in the way, the screen's in the
It's
way,
just
and
a
I can't hear him either.
Yeah, it's just a
Yeah.
question. So first of all, we'll give you some hearing assistance. And then Mr. Frey will let you move where you can see him if you.
I'll go to the end of this table,
Yeah,
yeah, it's my trial, and I can't believe that keeps happening. Thank you, I know this will work.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Does that help with the hearing?
100%.
Okay. Is there anyone else who's having any hard time hearing? We'll make sure we have a lot of these devices. Okay.
thank you, Your Honor.
If we could start over with that last question,
Of course.
or at least,
I'll try. All right. So, Mr. Lum, I wanted to ask you about this section of your report here. You say you recommend that Mr. Frey's rate avoid flying directly over populated areas.
That's just a recommendation we made to try and have good neighbor relations. So I strongly recommended that Mr. Frey avoid flying over his owner's property whenever possible.
Okay, and was there a reason why you would recommend that for Ms. Odom's property in particular?
Only that Ms. Odum definitely noticed it when Mr. Frey is flying, or Mr. Frey's spray is flying over the property. And the best way to avoid confrontation sometimes is to just avoid the area. So we try to do good neighbor things. That's the reason why.
And you knew at the time that Ms. Odom's spray was certified organic, right?
Of course.
Okay, what does that mean?
Certified organic means her farm does not use conventional pesticides in production of those vegetables, and that no pesticides will come in contact with those vegetables while they're grown or distributed. And there may be other things, but that's my understanding.
Okay. I'd also like to ask you some questions about state of land here. Ms. Odom also complained to you about a smell during the day.
That's correct.
The application. Do you know whether or not these chemicals that were sprayed that day create a smell or a strong odor?
Most pesticides have an odorant added to them in order for people to be able to detect them. It's very common.
Do you know whether an odorant is added to this particular pesticide?
I do not. I know it smells.
Okay. How do you know it smells?
I've smelled it before.
Okay. Did you smell it through this investigation?
I did not smell it on the day of the investigation.
Okay. What does it smell like?
A strong pungent odor, and I don't know that I can describe it well except to say that it is something that is fairly common to pesticide smells. Pesticides have pretty pungent smells.
Okay. Sometimes that's intentional.
Yes.
I also want to circle back. Did you ever have a conversation with Mr. Frey or anybody who works for him about this report after you issued it?
About what? I'm sorry.
About this report?
This one?
Yes.
I provided the report to Mr. Frey. I don't recall if we had a conversation about it.
You noted here in your report that Ms. Odom also complained of a plane flying too low over her property, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. What did you do about that allegation?
That's not in our area of jurisdiction.
Okay.
And if a plane is flying too low over a residential area, that is the purview of the Federal Aviation Administration. And there are offices in Fallon which can be contacted. Forgive me, I think there's offices in Fallon that can be contacted and make a complaint against a plane flying too low, but I may be recalling that incorrectly.
Okay. Do you recall how low Ms. Odom told you the plane was flying over her property?
I do not. It's in my report.
Did you ever do any factual inquiry to Mr. Freyr's company about where his plane was that day?
I did ask him where he was doing the work, and where the plane was, and he relayed the information to me.
Did you ever check any GPS equipment in the plane?
No.
Okay. Did you ever ask for any of the data from any GPS equipment in the plane?
No.
Have you ever done that as part of your investigations?
A few times.
Okay. Do most planes that you're aware of have GPS equipment in them?
I couldn't say. The newer ones I'm sure do, because the ones I've seen with it are newer. I don't know if they all do.
So you're not aware of whether or not that's a requirement under law, are you?
Projection foundation.
I'll allow it if he knows.
I do not.
Okay. All right. All right, Mr. Lund, let's move on to July 6, 2021 incident. Do you recall doing an investigation of that incident?
Yes.
Okay. So can you give the jury the basic background of what happened?
So on July 6th, I received a call from Ms. Odum stating that Frey spray had overflew her property and sprayed it. And that she was having symptoms of pesticide exposure.
And what did you do in response to that allegation?
I immediately contacted my supervisor, Brett Allen, alerted him to the fact that we had another investigation that was coming in. And he would have determined at that time he was to handle that investigation. And he had determined that I was going to do it. He told me I was going to do it.
Okay.
So at that point, I started making my inquiries.
Okay. Did Ms. Odom provide you with any evidence of a plane in the area that day?
She did. She provided me with cell phone video.
Okay. Did you take a look at that?
I did.
Okay. And did she identify the plane as belonging to Mr. Frey?
I could not, but Ms. Odom identified it as one of Mr. Frey's planes.
And she accurately identified his plane for the earlier incident in August of 2020, correct? She did identify the plane as from Frey spray. Do you recall what Ms. Odom told you happened?
Yeah, she said that the Frey spray plane flew to the north edge of her property and was spraying along the edge of her property.
Did you change the kind of sampling you did this time?
I did.
Okay, how did you change it?
I went from a discrete sample, which is an individual sample, to a transect, which would take 3 different samples from the field according to what I suspected would be the highest concentration to the lowest concentration. So in this case, I would have taken 3 samples starting at the north edge of the field, the middle of the field, and the southern edge of the field. And I would have started in the area of the lowest suspected concentration and taken the 3 samples in that order. And the reason I suggested to my supervisor a transect sample was that often if you have an application occurring in a certain location north of the field, say, I would expect that the pesticide readings that we send to the lab would be higher the closer it is to the application zone.
Okay. So this is a more intensive form of sampling than you did for the August 2020 incident, is that correct?
That's correct. Okay.
All right, so what did you do next?
So I set up a meeting with Ms. Luke to come out and take samples on the property. Once I arrived at the property, I told her that I was going to suggest a transect sample so that we could take 3 samples from the field and possibly determine the direction that the drift came from the application. I took the 3 samples based on what I suspected to be the lowest concentration sample first, and then doing the other 2. I should note that whenever I take multiple samples, all my safety gear, the gloves that I use to collect the samples, the bottles, whatever I put, not bottles. In the case of plant samples, I use foil, aluminum foil to wrap the samples in and then place them on plastic everything, my safety gear was changed, my clothes were changed between samples, so that I don't cross-contaminate samples and possibly get an error ingredient to the lab.
Okay.
Once those are collected, I immediately return them to the ice chest and store them in with cool ice blocks, not ice blocks, ice bags, and transport them into cool environment to the lab so that they don't degrade.
Okay.
It's done safely.
And how many samples did you take?
3 samples.
How much do these samples cost tomorrow?
I have no idea, that would be a lab question.
Okay. All right. So after you collected the samples, did you go out and talk to Mr. Frey?
Ms. Frey?
To Mr. Frey, Jerry Frey?
Oh, I'm sorry. So, I did call and talk to Mr. Frey and determined that he was in the area the morning of the reported spray. But he was not spraying fields that were directly adjacent to Ms. Frey's property. He was spraying fields that were near the Odum reservoir.
Okay. Did you take any steps to confirm or contradict what he told you about the location of his aircraft that day?
No,
Did you check his GPS equipment?
no,
Did you ask for GPS records?
no,
Okay. Did you interview any other witnesses in the neighborhood?
no.
All right. Did you take any steps to determine whether or not glyphosate is actually what Mr. Frey was spraying that day?
I requested Mr. Frey's official records from the application that he had conducted on that day.
Did you conduct an examination of the contents of the tank of his plane?
No.
All right, and for the jury, this is Exhibit 60. It's been admitted to evidence. And that's the July 6th, 2021 incident. I'm going to ask you a few more questions about this. So it's kind of awkward. I'm looking over here, trying to talk to you. So what were the results from the lab?
My results returned on July 29th, reported that samples tested negative for LLC, which was the active ingredient in Mr. Frey's application spray.
Are you aware of whether the department tested for any other chemicals that day?
I don't believe any other chemicals were tested by the department, except for the glyphosate, which was the one listed in the application records.
Right. So what was the determination of, what was the outcome of this investigation?
Since no positive results were found during the lab test, it was determined that it was unlikely that Mr. Frey sprayed Ms. Odum's property with that application.
And these results were, the Indian Chemistry Laboratory reported its results on July 29th, 2021, right?
Correct.
So it's about 23 days after the incident occurred?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Busby, it's more comfortable for you. We do have a lapel microphone, so you wouldn't have to.
Oh, yeah, that'd be great. Try that. Give me a moment.
Yeah.
All right, how's that? How's that? Better? Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Judge. Okay, so, do you know when you issued your report?
August 3rd.
Okay, so almost a month after the incident.
Yes.
Do you know when the report, the results from the lab report were provided to Ms. Odum?
I do not.
Okay. But you determined based on the facts that you found that no drift had occurred, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. All right. So, one more. This is Exhibit 59. Sure. Do you recognize this document?
Yes,
Is this the report of your investigation into other incidences that occurred in late August 2021?
that's correct.
So Ms. Odum made another report that she'd been sprayed, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And did you go through the same basic investigatory method that you did with the other two complaints?
All investigations are carried out using the same methodology.
So you collected samples, correct?
That's correct.
How many did you collect this time?
I believe I took 2 vegetation samples and 1 sample of a landscape fabric that was displayed some sort of residue.
You said displayed some sort of residue?
It had a white, kind of like a powdery white coating on it.
Okay. Did you recognize what that was?
No.
Did it look like anything to you?
Not that I'm aware of.
Some pesticides or herbicides or insecticides appear as powdery white coating on plants after they're sprayed.
This was on landscape fabric.
Does it, again, I mean, in your experience, do these things, when they're put on landscape fabric, do they look that way?
Objection, foundation.
I'll allow it based on his experience. I'll allow it.
I don't believe I've previously encountered that type of residue and had it test positive for pesticides. That's the one that I might knowledge.
Okay. And you were collecting samples the day after the complaint was made, is that correct?
I believe so, yes.
All right. So I assume you went through the same method when you contacted Mr. Frey.
That's correct.
Okay, what did you do?
Contacted Mr. Frey and asked him if he was in the area doing the application at the time.
Okay.
That this incident occurred.
And what did he say?
That he had a job that was in the Fallon area, approximately 1/4 mile north of Ms. Odum's property, and it was a insecticide spray.
Okay. So what else did Mr. Frey tell you about what was going on that day with his swine?
I asked him if he sprayed over Ms. Odum's property, and he told me he didn't. He said that in the course of the application, he may have had to fly over that neighborhood for safety reasons.
Did he say what those safety reasons were?
No,
Did you ask him?
no. I'm not a pilot, I wouldn't have understood.
Okay. Did you check the GPS equipment on this plane?
No,
Did you ask for data from the GPS equipment on this plane?
no,
Did you check the contents of his tank to determine whether those contents matched what he claimed to be spraying that day?
no. I requested records.
Okay. And that's your usual course for these
That
investigations?
is the usual course for an investigation.
All right. So these test samples were also submitted to the lab, is that correct?
That's correct.
And what were the results?
I believe that's on the next page.
Okay.
The NDA chemistry lab determined that malathion was not detected in the samples that I collected.
And that determination was made August 26th, correct?
That's correct.
So relatively quickly that time.
Yes.
Okay. So, and your report was issued on September 20th, 2021, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Do you recall whether you contacted Ms. Odum regarding the results, the lab results, before you issued your report and provided it to her?
I I do not. Normally, I will send the final report, which includes the lab results.
So, I mean, do you have any knowledge of whether Ms. Odum knew about whether or not, there had been a substantiated spray incident on her property from, August 17th until your report was issued, I believe, on September 20th, 2021?
Objection, foundation.
No, I just rephrase the question.
Do you know if anybody from the Department of Agriculture told Ms. Odum the results of the lab tests before you issued your report?
I do not.
Right. So, right. So, have you ever at any time found Mr. Frey to be in violation of the rule or regulation from the Department of Agriculture as the result of your investigations?
Not as a result of my investigations.
May I approach the bench, President Counsel? Of course.
Ladies and gentlemen, there's a matter of the core business I'll have to take care of and make a determination outside of your presence. So we're going to take a recess. We've been going for an hour and 20 minutes now, and so we're going to continue to work for a little bit, and then we'll probably take a 10-minute recess after we finish. So I would anticipate it would be about a 15 to 20-minute recess. During this recess, it is your duty not to converse among yourselves or with anyone else on any subject connected with the trial. Do not communicate with anyone in any way regarding the case or its merits, either by phone, email, text, internet, or other means. Do not read, watch, or listen to any news or media accounts or commentary about the case. Do not do any research, such as consulting dictionaries, using the internet, or using reference materials. Do not make any investigation, test the theory of the case, recreate any aspect of the case, or in any other way investigate or learn about the case on your own. Additionally, it is your duty not to form or express an opinion on any subject connected with this case until it is finally submitted to you. And during this recess, we'll have you stay in the jury room, but you can help yourself to anything that's in the refrigerator, and there are restrooms in the jury rooms. Thank you. Back on the record on case number 21-1038, Odum v. Frey. We've excused the jury. All parties and counsel and court personnel are present. We're meeting outside the presence of the jury. Mr. Busby wanted to bring up an issue regarding prior conduct, and I wanted to explore that outside the presence of the jury, consistent with the Thunder case. Mr. Busby.
Thank you, Your Honor.
And just, Your Honor, we've objected to any inquiry into prior incidents. Sure. That's already noted. Thank you.
And I think what's going to control is the Thunder analysis. I'll have to first determine what it is, whether it's proved by clear and convincing evidence, whether it's relevant, and whether it's prejudicial value, or it's probative value substantially outweighs the prejudicial value. Go ahead.
Thank you. Mr. Lum, are you aware of any previous incidences where the Department of Agriculture did an investigation of Mr. Frey other than the ones you did?
I was told there was one before my time, before I came.
Do you know what the outcome of that investigation was?
Objection, hearsay.
For purposes of this hearing, I'm going to allow, just I want to hear the question.
I do not. I have not seen that investigation.
Okay. Have you ever looked into the facts related to any previous incidences or allegations against Mr. Frey during the course of your investigations that you did here?
No.
Okay. Do you recall discussing previous allegations against Mr. Frey with your boss, Mr. Howland?
He's the one who brought it up to me originally, but the conversation was just that one had occurred in the past and that some errors were made by the lab. And that's pretty much all I was told.
Okay. That's all I have here.
So, do you have any questions?
No, not based on that.
I don't think we can meet, I'm prepared to make a finding that the previous incident, whatever it is, it's not, other than the fact that there was an investigation, that's the only thing that could possibly be shown by clear and convincing evidence. But I don't see what the relevancy is based on the testimony. What would the relevancy be?
And I understand at this point, but I'd like to preserve the right to raise the issue with future witnesses,
Sure.
as far as they have knowledge of previous incidents.
So as to right now, as to this witness, you won't be allowed to inquire into previous instances.
Understood.
Anything you want to put on the record with respect to that?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
Mr. Busby, anything?
I'm sorry?
Anything else with respect to that?
Not with respect to that, Your Honor.
So we'll go ahead and, we might as well, we'll take an additional 10 minutes for comfort break, and then we'll bring the jury back in and continue with your question. Mr. Busby.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We need recess.
All rise.